Yes.
It's the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. At this time is the public comment section of the meeting. If there's anybody from the public who wishes to comment, you're welcome to stand and be recognized. You are limited to 2 minutes. We have nobody from the public to speak. Okay. Next order of business is to approve the minutes of our January 13th meeting. Since we don't have a quorum, I believe that has to wait until we get one or until the next meeting. And again, because we don't have a quorum, we're not going to take on the action items as yet. Hopefully, by the time we get to them, we will have enough here. Michelle, you're gonna let us know if when we get a quorum?
Yeah.
How close are we now?
Yeah.
Too short.
Good more.
Okay, all right, very good.
Good to the reports.
Because of that, we're going to move to our presentations first. And first up is our FDOT report and the training opportunity. And I believe that is Ryan. Is Ryan going to be here?
He's not.
He is not. Does somebody want to sub for him?
Oh, is this name? Okay, this is for the. This is FDOT report. This is not
This is.
John Kubicki's. John.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Kubicki's
Start
next.
6A.
Yeah,
Okay,
so
so who does this one? Oh,
I do that.
Pam, my apologies.
That's okay. So I'm Pam Barr. I'm the liaison for Sarasota Manatee with FDOT. I wanted to let you know that there is a public meeting on April 1st for the US 41 Northport safety improvements. And that will begin at 6 p.m. It's a virtual meeting. And the information is at fdot.cc/US 41 Northport safety improvements. We can make sure that the MPO gets this and they can send it out. But that will be as of April 1st.
And what's the scope of that on 41? Do you know?
It's for the safety, let's see. It's gonna review the materials online through the project. Okay, it's the stuff that, like just the safety projects that's on US 41 in Northport.
Okay, they don't know from what point to what
It
point.
did not, I don't
Okay.
see where it says on here, but you can look in the FDOT website,
Say that again, FDO, FDOT.
fdot.cc/US 41 Northport safety improvements.
Okay. Thank you.
There will be meeting materials that will be available as of March 25th, so that will be next.
Thank you.
Okay, and then I know we're not doing the action items, but just to notify you that we did put a request in for 2 tip amendments. One is for Sarasota for the traffic ITS equipment to be purchased, and that's at $2,500,000. And then the Manatee one is for 5310 grant for the Easter Seal, Southwest Florida. 5310 is a federal grant. It helps with the purchase, with the being capital, usually it's the purchase of buses.
That is on the agenda as an action.
It is an action item, but I'm just notifying it as part of the FDOT
Oh, okay.
report. And I guess I move on to John's piece. So that's it for the FDOT.
I just had a quick question. The ITS, so you said Sarasota, county or city of?
For, I believe it was the
2.5 million for
Yeah, it's
ITS and traffic.
county,
Sarasota County.
yes.
So next, we're gonna move to staff reports, and first up is Nina with the 2050 long range.
We have an addendum, which is, just another addition to the FDOT report that
Is the training opportunity? Is there a slide? You put the slides in there? There you go.
Just the FDOT report and just make the FDOT.
So if you
Oh, I
look,
see.
look on the screens. The crash trends in Florida, we have 9 people dying every day. And we have 44 that are seriously injured every day. Because of these crashes that we have and because of the different causes, we're seeing that 45% of all fatal crashes are the lane departures. And then 20% of all the fatal crashes are non-motorists. That's our bike and our pedestrians. So that's a better than a quarter of a percentage, a quarter of the whole total number of crashes. So because of this, we are working with FHWA for a training opportunity called Combating Roadway Departures. This is more of a technical, but I do want to let you know that it is happening. If you have technical staff that you want to be involved in this, FDOT is offering a free training opportunity on combating the roadway departures. The tentative date right now is April 16th from 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m., but we're still looking for a location because this is for the Southwest Florida coastal area. So we need to find something that might be fairly accessible to everyone. And so if you know of anybody or any place that we might be able to do this training, please reach out to us. And then we will set that up. But that is for April 16th that we're looking for that.
Second page, third page, I didn't understand it.
Because it was 2 for the,
It was, I didn't understand,
Yes.
and they were different, but they weren't a lot
it's
different.
different, they're different funding pieces
Okay.
for the same.
Okay,
So in order to get the complete funding source that they can put in their tip, it had to be done in that manner.
so what's the one and what's the other? Because I mean, they
Okay,
don't say what they're different, I mean, they have different numbers slightly, but
One says Manatee, and then one says Sarasota.
no, let's say Manatee.
Yeah, there was a typo.
Okay, so what's
One
Manatee,
is
one's there?
Manatee.
Oh,
The first one is Manatee, he said, and.
are we the
second is
29% serious injuries or the 33%? Just checking to see if we're doing worse than Manatee, Sarasota or better.
Sarasota.
oh, you're looking at the chart,
Sarasota's-
okay.
Sarasota's 33.
Yeah, 33%.
I got it on the screen, and yours is the thing.
Yeah, I just,
Yep.
This one's Manatee.
I didn't understand it, so.
So, yeah. So we're looking for a venue for this training. So if you are aware of a place where this training can take place, it's for everything as far south as Collier, all the way up to Manatee County.
What is the training gonna be?
It's on April 16th from 8:30 to 5 p.m., working in conjunction with the Federal Highway Commission.
This training.
But it's a training and it's particularly for the technical people to help us so we can better reach our destination zero goal.
Pam, how does that fatality and injury number compare on the trend line? Is that static? Has it been going up, going down?
Unfortunately, it does tend to go up. The problem being is we are getting more people in, and with more people, we get more crashes. But we have to find ways that can slow people down. In crashes, if you get hit from the front or behind, the fatalities are not as high as when you get hit in the sides. And so we've tried to gear a lot of the safety measures. It may not eliminate the accident, but the severity of the accident that would cause a fatality or a severe injury.
Apparently pandemics are good for the trends though.
It slows people down, which makes them stay inside.
2020 was a drop. And then
Yeah.
fatality.
And now they're all coming back.
Yes.
So not only do we have people moving here, but we also have our snowbirds that are coming in.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Now we're gonna get into our MPO reports, and Jill Bennett is gonna talk about the 2015 long-range plan. Updating us.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I'm Jill Quigley with Benish. We're one of the general planning consultants to the MPO, working on the plan with the other consultants. Apologize. I'm going to talk to you today about the goals, objectives, and measures. That's what we've been working on. Some of the key takeaways of our work are that they've not changed much since 2045. The goals are well aligned with the vision that was selected for the plan, creating a balanced future. They're consistent with state and federal planning requirements, and the preferred project types correspond very well to the top ranked goals of safety, infrastructure, and environment. So to update the goals and objectives, we did a 3-step process, started with the 2045 goals and objectives and reviewed those. And the MPO did some outreach. We did a public survey and had a forum in Northport in December. And then we also went back and looked at federal requirements to make sure the goals were consistent with that. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the outreach results. This slide shows one of the questions we asked in the survey that was active from November to February, got over 700 responses. In this question, we asked people to rank the importance of the goals, and you can see the top 3 are safety, infrastructure, environment. When we go to the forum that was in December now, it was a pretty small participation, only 7 folks. You see on the left, this is how the members at that forum ranked the goals. So safety remained number 1, but they felt mobility and reliability should be number 2, and infrastructure resiliency should be number 3. So just a little bit off. But generally, we didn't get any comments throughout the survey or at the forum about the need to change really the goals or do anything different drastically from 2045. So we also looked at the federal requirements. Things that we look at are the last transportation funding bill, which really didn't have any major changes to metropolitan transportation planning. We look at the long-range transportation plan planning requirements letter. There is a draft currently in the works, but right now we're still working from the 2018 letter. So there's no changes since 2045 to that. We also looked at the national planning goals, which have not changed since the 2045 plan. And then we also took a look at some of the recent federal directives, executive orders, and other actions. And actually some of the changes you'll see in what we're recommending are a result of that. So some of the actions the new administration has taken specifically related to diversity, equity, and inclusion, rescinding a longstanding executive order about environmental justice, as well as some executive orders related to climate change. So I'm going to go through this next series of slides. These are the goals. I'm not going to go into detail. If you have a question or a comment, please stop me. But pretty much everything's staying relatively the same as 2045. So in 2045, there were bulleted goal statements, and basically what we've done for 2050 is taken those and combined them into a sentence or maybe multiple sentences, but mostly conveying the same sentiment from 2045. And then we have the objectives and bullets at the bottom. So for the economy, we're not recommending any changes to the goal other than the reformulation of the statement and no changes to the objectives. For environment, really no major changes, just rephrase the goal statement. You will see the underlined words there in the 3rd bullet of the objectives that used to read support green infrastructure. We're just changing it back to low impact development in response to some of the federal directives. This is probably the biggest change. This goal in 2045 was equity and livability. We're recommending that it just be livability. And then as you see at the bottom in the objectives, that objective used to read ensure equity in all transportation decisions. We're recommending any change to economic opportunity because that has been a big focus of the new administration. It doesn't mean the MPO isn't necessarily going to not consider equity. It's just, you have a question?
No, but thank you for the third objective.
Improve access for people with disabilities. That continues from 2045, so, but you're welcome.
Will these changes in language affect policy or actions or funding in any serious way?
I don't think so. So reading the USDOT order that came out, they are directing federal money to be spent in different areas. So like what I've read, they want it to be focused on areas where the marriage rate and the birth rate is higher than the national average. Where there's children, family with lots of children, that's where they want the investments to go. But also to help alleviate poverty. So they're using different language, but I think the result will probably be about the same. For the infrastructure goal, there were no changes here. Mobility, again, no changes to this from 2045. Really relates to commute times and improving traffic flow, reducing congestion. Project delivery, again, no changes from 2045, and this is just really focusing on ensuring that projects are well matched to the goals and objectives, and encouraging public and private participation in projects. And then safety, again, no major changes. At the MPO staff direction, we actually did add an objective to plan for efficient evacuations and safe returns. Unfortunately, that's something you all have had to deal with quite a bit the last couple of years. The technology goal, again, no changes here. There has been some guidance from the administration regarding electric vehicles, but unlike some of the other areas, they've not been forbidden, so it's okay to move forward with that. And then just wrapping up a little bit of some of the outreach. One of the questions in the survey, we also asked about preferred project types. Where does the public think the MPO should prioritize projects, invest their funds? And you can see the #1 answer there was improving traffic flow and safety. 2 was safer walking, and 3 was to improve intersections. We asked a similar question at the public forum. It didn't quite have all these same options. You can see at the public forum, there was a big focus on public transit, bicycle pedestrian, but intersection and operational improvements also made it in there.
How many participated in the survey?
Over 700, 722.
That's statistically significant.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was not designed to be a statistically significant survey, right? It was just on the MPO website, so it wasn't. You take it and then we make sure you don't take it again, kind of thing. But so what's next? And Franco's going to talk about a little bit of this, but we're continuing to work on the prioritization process. There will be some additional outreach in phase 3 to help develop the cost feasible plan. And we're really working to align available funding with priority projects that support the goals of the plan. So with that, if there's any other questions, comments?
Questions, comments? Thank you.
Thank you.
So it's continuation. So it's continuation.
Sorry.
We do have a quorum.
Good evening, everyone. Franco Saracino with Kelson and Associates. I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about the beginning of the development of the cost feasible plan. Lots of federal requirements when it comes to LRTP. One of the fundamental requirements is that we demonstrate the cost feasibility of the projects that we include in the plan. It means it has to be cost feasible and we have to do the math to show it. How we do that is we create cost revenue balance tables of projects organized by time bands, those 3 time bands, 5-year time bands, and 1 10-year time band at the end. And essentially, we need to show that revenue exceeds or is equal to cost in each of those time bands in the cost feasible plan. So how we get there is we start by developing revenue forecasts and year of expenditure dollars. So everything is inflated to the year of expenditure or the 5-year period of expenditure. I'm going to share our revenue forecast with you tonight. The next step is to prioritize projects. We always know we can't build everything we need to build, so we have to prioritize. It's a key step in the process. We then develop project cost estimates for those prioritized projects that include planning and engineering costs, right-of-way costs, and construction costs. We then subtract the cost of any completed phases or program phases from them. So for example, if a project has already been designed, and we just have right-of-way construction, we subtract that planning and engineering cost. Then we simply allocate funding in prioritized order for those projects based on the earliest time band that money is available. One exception, a couple of exceptions. One exception is that for projects that have already had pre-construction funding for phases completed or funded and programmed, we typically float those to the top of the priority list. These are projects that we've already invested in. We want to make those priorities. The other exception to cost feasibility is that we can use something called boxed funds. What that means is that we can take some money off the top before we start building the cost feasible plan, set it aside, they're also known as set-asides, and then include programs of projects that are eligible for those funds. What that gives us is some flexibility. For example, if we have an active transportation boxed fund, we set aside a certain amount of money. We include in the cost feasible plan a list of all of the active transportation projects, making them all eligible to be advanced as part of the cost feasible plan. So it gives us some flexibility in terms of which projects get advanced in priority order down the road. In this particular plan update, we're going to tighten up the use of box funds because one of the drawbacks of box funds is it sort of undermines the clarity of the prioritization of projects. So what we'll likely do, we're not there yet, but what we'll likely do is include prioritized lists of projects in the box funds, assuming we have box funds, because funds are down, revenues are down. But if we do, we'll have prioritized lists and limit those lists to a limited number of projects to make it more like the cost feasibility. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about revenues. We've got 2 categories of revenues for transportation. The first is local. Includes state distributed fuel taxes. There are 2 of those, constitutional and county fuel tax. Those funds are distributed to all counties in the state and are eligible for any type of transportation expenditure, whether it's operation and management or capital investment. The second category is local option fuel taxes. These are taxes that have been elected to be levied in these counties. And there are 3 of those, the 1 to 5 cent, the 1 to 6, and the 9 cent, for a total of 12 cents of local option fuel taxes. And both Manatee and Sarasota County have those in place. The third category is the infrastructure surtax. This is in Manatee a half penny, and Sarasota a penny sales tax for infrastructure. And then, of course, impact fees, which are collected from developers. And we've included both municipal and county impact fees and mobility fees. The second category is state and federal revenue sources. And those include the STPG, which we know as SU, but you may be familiar with that acronym. Those are the ones that the MPO has the most flexibility with how to spend them. Transportation alternatives, which is for typically multimodal improvements. The non-SIS state highway system, also known as other arterials or other roadways. This typically in the past has represented one of the biggest chunks of money, of state federal money. Unfortunately, that is one of the categories that's way down this year, and I'll share that with you in a minute. Carbon reduction program is for improvements that reduce greenhouse gases. We've got the Transportation Regional Incentive Program. Those are those regional funds that we have to share with our neighbors. And then, of course, transit funds. So I've got 3 slides on the actual revenue forecasts, one for Manatee, one for Sarasota, and one for state federal. For Manatee County, we've got about $4.3 billion, which is a very big number, and there are caveats to that number. The first is for the sales tax, which represents almost half of that. 15% of those funds are typically spent by Manatee County for non-transportation expenses, public safety, parks, things like that. So that will come off the top, reducing that quite a bit. The next largest category is impact fees. This number is significantly higher than in the last LRTP, partly because we have a higher growth rate, higher number of population and employment that we're expecting in 2050 than we did in 2045. Partly also due to the fact that Manatee County has instituted escalated impact fee rates. So for the future year forecast, we use the 2028 rates to develop that number. Then we've got the local option fuel tax at about $1 billion and the state fuel taxes at about $200 million. For Sarasota County, a little bit more at $5.1 billion. That sales surtax caveat is a little bigger. Sarasota County typically only consumes about 35% of that revenue source for transportation. Half of that revenue goes to the school board. The rest, apart from the 35%, goes to a variety of programs, neighborhoods, parks, other types of infrastructure. The impact fees are significantly lower, partly because there's more development in the infill areas, which have lower impact fee rates than the Manatee County rates. The Manatee County development is further out east, so that's the reason for that. And we've got about $840 million of fuel taxes in Sarasota County. Which brings me to state federal, for a total of about $1.9 billion. The largest category of state federal funds is in that CIS, that blue bar, which I didn't include in that list, because in reality, that's actually not a revenue source. Strategic intermodal system decisions are made in Tallahassee, so that is just the aggregate of the cost of the CIS cost feasible plan. So the 2050 CIS cost feasible plan has already been developed, and that's just simply the allocated costs in that plan. SU is $359 million. As you can see, that non-CIS state highway system number is significantly lower than it was in the 2045 at $157 million, which combined with the non-SHS that used to be combined, so that's about $250. In the 2045 plan, that was about $1 billion. So significantly less state federal funds that we have available for this plan. Which brings me to the final slide, which is a comparison of Manatee, Sarasota, and state federal. This is the first time in my career in 25 years that I've seen a chart that looks like this. Usually the state federal is much bigger than the local funds. A couple caveats. First of all, for the local funding, about half is going to be consumed by those other infrastructure improvements for the surtax. Another big chunk, part of that half, is going to be consumed by existing system operating and maintenance costs. So the actual amount that we'll have for the cost feasible plan for local funds is about half of what you see there. Unfortunately, the state federal is what it is. We have less than $1 billion to work with in the cost feasible plan. So it is going to be a leaner cost feasible plan than what we've seen in the past, unfortunately. So that concludes my presentation. Any questions?
With the declining revenue, as you have more EVs, still no mechanism to collect roadway use fees. Is there anything going forward to start to deal with that? Pretty much drive on the same road.
Not that I'm aware of. I think, and by the way, for the fuel taxes, we did factor the fuel tax revenues by expected fuel efficiency increases reflecting EVs. So those numbers are tempered by that. But in terms of new revenue sources, the federal rule is that we can only include revenue sources that are either existing policy or we can show that they are likely to be existing policy in the near future. So unfortunately, we can't we can't include any additional revenues.
Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, so this one, in terms of going back to the prioritizing projects, since there's way less money. Do you use the same process that NPO uses for their 2025 priorities, getting out to the municipalities and that kind of exact same process, or is there a different way that you guys are using to establish priorities?
That is one part of the process. I know the MPO has had one-on-one meetings with all the municipalities to understand what their priorities are. We're also going to use the process that Jill talked about, that Benish developed, which is a data-based, goal-driven prioritization process. Lots of different things in the mixture to prioritize projects, those being two of them. Another one, as I mentioned, is projects that have had previous investment, which is the case for a lot of the project priorities. So all of the above.
It's quite a mouthful for, and you guys kind of coordinate and collate all of that.
Correct.
Gotcha.
Okay,
Yep. We work closely with the MPO to make sure that we get that right.
Thank you.
With the drop off from the state and the feds, can you calculate how much we're gonna be underfunded against need?
We will be able to in about 2 months. Yep. And we will.
Is it gonna be severe?
I'm afraid so. I can't say right now, but yeah, I mean, you know, in the 2045, when we had over 4 billion in state federal. Now granted, a big portion of that, more than half of that was for this. But we had a lot more money, at least $1 billion more. We had lots of unfunded needs. I don't have a number for you in terms of the amount, but we're gonna have even more this time, unfortunately.
And that's happening statewide.
Pretty much. Yep.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you.
Sure.
I'm sorry. Well, since we now have a quorum, Virginia has recommended that we go back and take up number 5 on our agenda under the action items. We have 3, and the first one is the TIP amendments. And
which I have presented to you. We have the 2 TIP amendments. We have 456052-1, the traffic signal ITS equipment purchase. This is a new project that requires a formal amendment to add to the TIP for the year 25. And it's for capital for the ITS.
So moved.
we have a second.
We have a second piece on there too.
Ah.
It's also for the 5310 capital that we talked about for buses for the Easter Sierra.
Okay.
Still moved.
We have a motion on the floor to approve this. We have a second.
Second.
Sarah? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, passes. Thank you, Pam. Next up is our 2025 project priorities. Nina?
Sure, thank you. So included in your agenda packet is a draft of the 2025 list of project priorities, would look something like this. We actually sent an updated list on Friday, which I'm hoping you all received. I'm seeing no, so that's did not receive. Okay. So we sent an updated list on Friday, and the only changes that were included in the list were a few additional applications from the city of Bradenton, one from Palmetto, and then 2 projects from Sarasota County. A couple of those projects went to the needs list. Otherwise, the projects from Bradenton were largely related to the mobility study, which we completed late last year. So those are under the Transform Tomorrow projects. There was an active transportation project, and there is a couple of resilience projects that were added to the list. But otherwise, the projects that were existing, are unchanged from the draft that we saw back in January. So the reason this list is significant, is this is the mechanism through which local jurisdictions, submit applications to FDOT, for funding consideration. And all of these projects, or at least the ones that are color coded, are identified in our cost feasible plan or in one of the, cost feasible funding programs or boxes. So once the board adopts the list of project priorities, we collect all of those applications which have been completed, and we send them off to FDOT, and request them to consider these projects for funding. Several of these projects that are highlighted in green, and that have numbers in front of them, those are projects that have already, had one or more phases funded in the work program. And we ask that FDOT, focus on those projects and push them through to completion and get them constructed so that we can move on. Otherwise, the other projects, are not yet funded and are looking for funding. So this is something that happens every year. At this point, it happens every year. We will take this to the board, for their adoption on March 31st. And what we're asking from this committee today is to, recommend MPO board approval, of these, draft project priorities. And I'm happy to take any questions or comments, before you review that.
Were there any major changes from your previous report on this?
No, only the additional, projects that have been submitted by Bradenton, Palmetto, and Sarasota County. Sarasota County's projects were both, put on the needs list, which means they will not be considered for funding. That list is the last 2 pages, 2 or 3 pages, and we include this if the jurisdictions want to, demonstrate local need for projects, either for, state or federal funding opportunities. But they are not consistent with cost feasible and so therefore are not eligible for funding through the MPO process. And then we had several projects submitted by Bradenton and then, one by Palmetto. But otherwise, the existing projects are unchanged.
Xavier?
You said that anything that falls under the needs list doesn't fit the amount as far as what it would cost.
It's not identified in the long-range transportation plan. So what Bronco had presented on was the early stages of the development of the cost feasible, which ends in a project list. So the next step after that is the jurisdiction submit the priority applications for those projects. These projects were not identified in the 2045 and are inconsistent with the plan at this point.
And the 2025 project priorities, those are priorities, right?
Those are the priorities identified by the local agencies.
So I just have a quick question before we approve it. On the Erie Road, the 69th Street, I saw the information you guys gave on crashes and it came up, it went up to like 2022. Now, would they be doing like another study of the widening after it gets widened? Because I'm just wondering, because I actually live on that road and like we've seen multiple crashes like in the last 6 months because of all the traffic. Like you see one like maybe twice a week, 3 times a week, almost in the same location.
Sure.
Well, so I'm just interested. So that's good that it's widened.
Sure, yeah. And if there's always safety concerns, you can reach out to the county, or if it's a state road, reach out to the state. You can also bring it to our attention, and we can see what the safety data says. If it's not under state jurisdiction, we can send it off to the county and can ask them to take a closer look. We are looking at the needs list, for consideration into the cost feasible for 2050. But like what you heard Marco say, that list is going to be very strategic, to say the least, moving forward. But those projects are not entirely excluded at this point. So at the bottom of the needs list is the transit study. We are looking at doing a transit study in the next 5 years. So we do also take a look at the list, the needs list, to see, what may need to be included.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you, Nina. Take a motion to approve.
So moved.
Xavier, have a second?
I second.
John? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Third action item is review of performance measures for Shani.
All right, good evening, everyone. So I'm gonna talk about the performance measures 2 and 3. So these focuses on the conditions of our transportation infrastructure and the system's performance. So the federal transportation law requires state DOTs, MPOs and TPOs to implement transportation performance management as their strategic approach to making investments and policy decisions. So this transportation performance management it builds on previous performance measures and forecasted data to set these targets. So it's the framework is under 5 categories: PM1, which is highway safety, which we recently adopted in January. And now we are updating the PM2 and PM3, which is conditions of infrastructure conditions of bridge and pavement. And PM3 is system performance and freight movement. So the next 2, transit asset management and transit safety. So these are adopted by our transit agency, but the MPO kind of supports them. So we include transit safety with our performance measure 1, highway safety, and transit asset management is is included in our tips. So the first 3 are basically the MPO's focus. And to set these targets, agencies usually have like 2 options. One is either you support the targets that are set by FDOT, or the agency could set their own targets based on the local priorities. So historically, with performance measure 2 and 3, the MPO has always supported what the targets were established by the state. And we are planning on doing the same this time around. So this is a map of national highway system, which in our region in Sarasota-Manali area, it includes US 41, US 301, and then we have I-75, 275, State Road 70, and State Road 64. So the performance measures 2 and 3 measure those metrics on just these national highway systems. So that's one of the reasons why MPO doesn't set their own targets, is because the MPO doesn't monitor any of these networks. These are mostly like state maintained and monitored roads. So coming to performance measure 2. So this performance management measure kind of assesses the conditions of bridges and pavements on the NHS based on the 6 measures. So for pavements, it's by percentage of pavements that is on interstate system, which is in good and bad conditions. And then we have percent of pavement on non-interstate system, which is good and poor condition. For bridges, it's kind of the same percentage of bridges by deck area, which are in good and poor condition. So for all those infrastructure that is in good condition, there's no major funding or investments required, and for those in poor conditions, it suggests like major investments. The table on the right is in blue is the existing statewide conditions for bridges and pavements. And if you notice, from 2018 to 2023, the infrastructure that is in poor condition has kind of steadily declined. And on the left is the performance measure targets for 2023 and 2025. So the FDOT kind of adopts these targets on a 2-year and 4-year interval. And these targets were adopted by the MPO in late 2022. So since those targets, since the infrastructure was overperforming those targets, the FDOT decided to kind of update their 2025 targets. And that's one of the reasons why we bring it to the committees and board this time around. So the target that was updated in PM2 is the percentage of NHS bridge that are in poor condition. So earlier it was 10%, and now they moved the target to 5%. So we just want about 5% of our bridges to be in poor. So since we were overperforming our previously estimated targets, we kind of pushed it to 5%. And performance measure 3 is the system performance. this kind of measures the reliability of passenger and truck freight travel on NHS based on 3 performance measures, which is interstate reliability, non-interstate reliability, and truck reliability. So kind of similar situation. On the right is the existing conditions, and on the left is the 2023 targets and 2025 targets. So even with system performance, it was kind of similar, and we have kind of surpassed our targets that were set in 2022. So in 25, they updated the interstate and non-interstate reliability. So earlier it was 70% for interstate reliability. So now we've pushed it to be 75%, and for non-interstate NHS reliability, it was 50%. So now we've pushed it to 60%. So we want our interstates to be more reliable by like 5%, which is our 2025 target. So this is like the summary of the updates that were made to previous adopted 2025 targets to the the updated 2025 targets. So for the PM2, it was bridges. So the earlier target was 10, so we've pushed it down to 5%, and for interstate it was 70. We pushed it to 75, and non-interstate it was 50, and we pushed it to 60. So we recommend this vote to have a motion and have it adopted by the vote. And with that said, I can take any questions.
Any questions or comments?
Yeah, one quick one. What's the definition of reliable? What do you have to have? Be reliable? Oh, just available?
Yeah, I
You can
guess.
drive on it?
Yeah, if you're getting from point A to point B in 15 minutes, like in no traffic time, like in non-peak hours. So in peak hours, if it's taking you about like 25 minutes, it's unreliable by a certain percent. So it's the difference in travel time in peak and non-peak. So how reliable is that segment at a particular point in time?
Okay, so there are different factors they put into
Yes.
that definition. Okay, thanks.
Could you go back to your previous slide, please?
Sure.
On the reliability. So I've noticed reliability numbers here, they've been coming down since 2020. Are you anticipating that number to continue, or do you see that reversing?
Can you maybe?
So in 2020, we had 92% reliability in interstate and 93%
Sure.
on non-interstate. And 3 years later, it's down to 82, 83%, 89.
Sure, again, since it's on the NHS, like we haven't widened our roads, like the roads have remained the same, but then the number of people using the interstate has like have increased so much. So I think it is good that we maintain the targets that we have with all the new growth and number of people that are driving. So I would say it might.
My question on that slide is, the statewide average is over 80%, was 90%, and we're only shooting for 75 and 60%. Is that asking? Why are we setting our target so much lower than the statewide existing?
So the initial target was 70%. The state kind of underestimated how well we could perform, so now they've pushed it to 75. So it
Yeah, I try to compare us to, you know, the east coast of Florida, to me, has a lot worse traffic than we have. I-4 is a mess. But I guess there's other parts of rural Florida that you've got 95, 100% reliability to get where you want to get in the time that you've got to get there. But it seems like we could be better than 75 and 60, but that's all I'm saying.
I agree.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
I will need a motion to accept this report. Mr. Chair. Mr. Green, you need a second?
Second.
Any other further comments or questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you.
Can you get the second on that? Great.
One other piece of business that we have to go to conclude, now that we have a form, is I need a motion to approve our minutes from our January
I
13th.
move that we approve the minutes from the January 13th
Mr.
meeting.
Esty, thank you. Have a second?
the motion.
Any comments or questions? All those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Now we will jump back down to our presentations, and Ryan is going to talk to us about the Ed Smith planning study.
Good afternoon, everyone. Did you want to say 2 words? I'll jump in. Okay.
So, Ryan students with Khan, will give us an update on Ed Smith staging study. So this is one of those baseball studies that came out of our 2045 LRTP. So, we have like 3 baseball suggestions. The first one was LECOM study, which we recently, adopted. And the second one is Ed Smith, which is, in process. So Ryan will give you, more details about this.
All right, thank you very much, Christine. Ryan Suarez with Kimley Warren. Good afternoon. I think the first time I speak to this group. Now it's like 5 till 6. How long do we usually run? You guys like to stay real late? Because this morning I went like 30 minutes. We got a lot of like back and forth between the TAC.
You skip it out early.
Okay.
She's gonna mention about that, you.
Way to start. Okay, I'll do my best to kind of keep it as brief, but please interject.
I think that was a coincidence.
Okay. I won't take it personally.
Yeah.
All right, as Barshini mentioned, this is one of 3 baseball stadium studies that came out of the LRTP. We got focus areas here. I'll just touch on it. We focus on multimodal access and safety. Thinking about the distinction or the variation in traffic patterns on game days versus non-game days. And of course, what that interaction is with the neighborhoods and the land uses. And that's important. I got a separate slide to talk about that. Results, we do want to package improvements into package multimodal access and safety improvements into short, medium, and long-range improvements for inclusion into the long-range transportation plan, which is currently in the process of being developed. So this is the study area right now. As I mentioned this morning, you may ask yourself, hey, I thought this was just focused on the stadium. Yes, and no, it's very important to understand that these roads don't stop where the stadium ends. They do extend out into these neighborhoods. And it is in fact some of the neighborhoods that surround the stadium that stand to benefit from better bike, better sidewalk, better intersection safety as well. Beyond that, there are existing plans from the city and the county that factor multimodal transportation improvements, which include 12th Street, Tuttle, Beneva. So whatever we come up with does align and needs to align with those plans as well. So you have the expanded, and can everyone see this? We've got on the west side 301, on the east Beneva, on the north side 17, which really effectively in this part of Sarasota County is like the city boundary as well, and then Foodville on the south. In terms of project schedule, we really package, we got a lot of different tasks and activities that are ongoing for the project, but we package them into these 3 phases, major phases. What are the deficiencies? Phase 2, what are we going to do to fix them? Right, solutions, treatments, and then 3, what are we going to do about the implementation step? Importantly, here we've added the LRTP schedule because again, we do want to align our plan or improvements with this current cost feasible plan. I think somebody mentioned here how important it is to include these projects within the LRTP, because if they do become, well, the funding does become available, or if the cities do want to submit as a priority project, they're there, they don't have to jump to any extra hoops. Okay. So that's an important part of the process. Any questions on this before I get into the next piece, which is area conditions and some of the data points? No? Okay. Study area neighborhoods are shown here. As I mentioned before, we've got a lot of activity going on in this area. You'll see the points of interest, the elementary school, which is Tuttle Elementary on Eighth and Tuttle Road. The Limelight District, which is largely industrial along the railroad tracks. But this neighborhood and this industrial area has tenants and vendors who are interested in kind of transforming the type of activity that's going on there. There's a little momentum in that regard. So, and then you'll see the E.N. Smith complex noted there, effectively captured, right next to the parking stadium. Future land use is important here, because the roads that we design have to fit into the context of the land use that they are adjacent to. So who are the types of users that are going to use this roadway? A lot of that is aligned with the land use that's there, right? In an urban environment, you're gonna get more ped, cyclists. You're out in the rural areas, you're gonna get more truck traffic and cars. So effectively, the design features that are integrated that will develop as part of solutions to the issues that we address have to address the needs of all the various users that are gonna use this roadway. That's a topic. How many of you have heard of FDOT, the FDOT context classification system? Okay. That's a little primer to what that means, context, land use context, and how do we design our roads. So, and that's why we have this future land use map here, so that we can align those things properly. So these are considerations that are going to solutions, as I mentioned before. So what's out there today? And this is where hopefully we can kind of generate a little discussion. Maybe you have an anecdote, maybe you have a story and experience that you can share with us here as part of this presentation. You do have bike facilities, you do have sidewalk facilities on a lot of major roads on here. There are some gaps in some of these systems. I'll just point out bike lanes over on 301, although there has been a couple drove through, there were a couple of fixes near, I think it was like just north of 10th by the railroad tracks. Sidewalks kind of jog on one side versus another on certain stretches of road, particularly on 12th, which is important in terms of connecting some of those neighborhoods on the east side of our study area. Trail networks are shown as well, but a lot of the existing trail networks really exist outside of our study area boundary. We got the Circus Trail out here, which connects up to the Bobby Jones facility. The Legacy Trail, pointed out here, it does end at Fruitville. There is, the city does have a multimodal plan that includes trails to the north and beyond. And within our study area. And then there is the Tuttle Walkway, which is this really nice feature that's for peds and cyclists. Just across the street, it opens up from the elementary school. So I'll jump into crashes. So on this map, just to describe what's on here, we've got two things. We call it a crash density map. So you've got this variation in colors. Yellow being the locations where we see the highest density of crashes, and then that light blue where we see the lowest density of crashes. Now this map includes a 5-year data set of crashes for all types of crashes, right? And then on top of that, we got crash severity. The yellow, serious injuries, and in the red, fatalities. So this helps us to see where are the hot spots, where are the points that might be that might need a fix of some kind to improve safety. Fruitville and Beneva seems to be a problem there. To the north, Lockwood and 17th, also we see a concentration of activity as well. Fruitville does seem to be a problem. You see Fruitville 301, Fruitville at Tuttle. So there's a lot that can be drawn from this crash data. Is everybody understanding kind of the information? Okay, good. Everybody's still with me. Now this one here, this graphic here is just the bike head crashes. And this is important because of some of the charts that we have as part of this study. And I'm going to call out a few points here that are consistent with the previous map. You have a big concentration of bike ped crashes over here in the southeast corner of the study area. So this is Beneva and Fruitville. Tuttle, if you take a look at Tuttle, you do see a mixed bag crashes, from Fruitville all the way north and, to the elementary school as well. There's a lot of activity on 301 as well. So those are just some major points that I could draw attention to. Did you have a question? Or you- You're just wanting bugs, okay, yeah. So, any thoughts on this here?
So do you see with the car crashes versus the bike, are they about the same in the same locations, or do you show a different area?
They align to a certain degree, and it is a good question. You'll see, okay, and we could just kind of go, the places that I called out, Fruitville and Beneva. I mean, we've got a pretty good concentration. I think the one difference is really, Beneva and 17th. There is some crash activity going on up there, but based on bike and pet crashes, we don't see any. So maybe all these folks already know, hey, avoid that, that's too messy, I don't, that's just an inference, so. Good question, anyone else? Okay, I got some images here. Back to, what we see in the data, what we see in terms of facilities. We know there are facilities out there, but what does it actually look like on the ground, right? Because it's a whole different story if you are a walker, a cyclist, a disabled person, and using these facilities, right? So for example, 12th Street on the west side is a completely different environment than 12th Street in front of the stadium. On the west side, that's not a very interesting walking environment. The land use context is all the parking is up front, the sidewalk is right adjacent to the road, that's right shoulder. Yeah, great, we got a bike facility, but I'll tell you, probably a lot of bikers are not gonna wanna ride, I wouldn't wanna ride my bike in that lane, some folks are more comfortable with it. But it's just not the same as what we see in front of the stadium, and that points beyond further to the east. That's the right of way narrows, and then we don't have as much space to work with in terms of adding back facilities, so the context changes there. Well, the roadway design changes a little bit here. Anyone have experience walking, biking in this area?
No, but I have a question. You have all of these pictures up here and all of the graphics, but you've not mentioned one thing about people in wheelchairs maneuvering around, like Fruitville and 301, or people in walkers, or people with any kind of disability. Have you looked into that at all?
Any improvements to multimodal mobility is gonna improve, they're gonna equate to improvements that are ADA compliant and that speak to the needs of all users. So I did make a little mention of all users, and we do want to include persons with disabilities as part of that discussion as well. I've got some anecdotal information. We were at a Ed Smith ball game this Saturday, and there were some specific situations with folks in wheelchairs, and I'll get to that to describe what we saw as well. So thank you for that comment. We are trying to be as consistent as possible with universal design principles that address the needs of all users.
Ryan,
Yes, sir.
I've never been to Ed Smith. Do people come into the ballpark off of 12th Street?
They come from a lot of different directions. Hold that thought. Kurt, is it okay if I call you Kurt? Hold that thought, because I got a slide. We're gonna talk about Ed Smith, because we're gonna narrow in to Ed Smith specifically and some of our observations at the game. We were at a game observing traffic, access into the game, and then egress as well. People leaving the door. So hold that. Tuttle, I think Tuttle's gonna be a focus for us. We saw a lot of bikers on Saturday. using all variation of bikes, tricycles, motorized bikes, just regular pedal bikes. And then, of course, I called out the crash information from the previous slide. And of course, there's the elementary school there as well. This is what Tuttle looks like, looking, it says north, that just means the north side of our study area, this is looking southbound towards that 12th Street intersection. And Kurt, to just kind of preview your question, this was a heavily trafficked pedestrian intersection during the game, and we'll get to that in just a second. One thing I'd like to note on some of these, that's the walkway. Here's south of the elementary school, looking at the signalized intersection that connects the walkway to Tuttle Elementary. I mean, take a look at the utilities that are really up close to the sidewalk, and the sidewalk is right adjacent to the road. You know, that tells us that we may not have a lot of room to work with, to add some wider sidewalk. That's TBD at this point, but it is something that we have to contend with. And if we do have right of way, you know, what's that cost gonna be in order to improve that the way we'd like it to look? So, and here's Tuttle on the south side. The nice thing about Tuttle versus the 12th Street West section is it does have the median, which just creates just an opportunity really for pedestrians if we're going to add a mid-block or anything like that. Okay. Trevor's telling me that kind of speed this along. All right. Legacy Trail, we'll skip Beneva here. There's not a whole lot. All we wanted to do here on Beneva is just draw attention to the fact that we are aware that there's a situation, crash incidents over here, and also the need to better connect Legacy Trail and pedestrians and other bike activity to the Circus Trail and into Bobby Jones. All right, so your question, Kurt. We were at the game on Saturday. There were, I'm gonna say, it wasn't sold out. Capacity, what we understand is 8,500. I think I heard something like 7,500 attendees at the game. So it was pretty full. It was pretty full. Now, in terms of queues that I saw, I was over here on Tuttle and 12. There was a tremendous amount. Once the main parking lot was closed, which is an hour before the game, that's when it got full. And that's the one just to the east. There's a lot of traffic queued up on Tuttle going northbound, making the left-hand turn into 12, which that queue built on 12 because it was folks that were being directed to that north parking lot. That was significant. Then, of course, you saw a lot of folks trying to cut down 10th as well through the neighborhoods to see if they can find a better way to get to the north parking lot. Unfortunately, they were just directed further out to line, around 12, and then back to the parking lot. So overall, it was messy for about maybe 45 minutes. But once the game started at 1 o'clock, it really was free and clear of traffic soon thereafter. On the egress, there were a couple of slowdowns, particularly at this main intersection, 12th and Tuttle, given that we have a lot of folks who park on the other side of Tuttle and other folks coming from 12th Street. So that's to validate your comment, Kurt. So folks crossing the street were preventing other folks from making right-hand turns, cars, right-hand turns, and also making left-hand turns to go north on Tuttle. So a little bit of a slowdown there, but again, nothing too egregious. Some folks had to wait one light, that was about it. It kind of trickled out. About 4 o'clock, it was all free and clear. So I have still yet to engage with our partners who are on the Euclid and 12th Street side to figure out what their observations were, given the traffic that was funneling into the main parking lot north of the stadium. Any thoughts on this? We're gonna kind of skip through the market analysis. Let's go to next steps for today. We will be out there one more day. Got a Saturday 1 o'clock game. We'll be out there on Thursday night, the 20th, for a Yankees game. Maybe that one's gonna be sold out, and we'll see what the parking utilization really ends up looking like. We are gonna go out with staff on a bike audit, so this will be like a walk audit. But it'll be a similar idea to see what's what did things actually look like on the ground? Now we are gonna have some spots for that bike audit, if anybody's interested. I think right now we have about 9 folks. I think we're gonna make space for about 12 to include, so look for that. If you're interested, come join us. If you have an experience that you want to share, if you're familiar with the area, we'd be more than happy to have you. Yes.
So I'm interested in the Euclid part of it, because Euclid, goes into the neighborhood. Also, that setback goes right into the neighborhoods, and it has like the roundabout. Have you guys saw the traffic there when the game starts from Euclid?
I can speak to that.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah.
Thank you, Trevor.
I was just gonna say, prior to the game, and Trevor Poole with Family Horn, prior to the game, we did go down to the neighborhoods on the southwestern portion of the stadium. The cops actually were stationed and had all those roads blocked through traffic. So no one could get in unless you live in the neighborhood.
Oh, that's good.
Now, after the game, all those blockades were pulled, so people were able to
Going
exit,
through, the
yeah,
kids
exit
go
the road.
out, yeah.
Yeah, just to get everybody exited as soon as possible.
It was interesting because I think some of those folks, to their chagrin, I think they were actually wanting to have people park and make a little bit of money out of the game, but they didn't. Cops were sending people in different directions, so. Okay, very important here. We have a nice interactive map. It's a story map, and this is just an electronic tool for folks to be able to provide their comments to us. It's a nice little tool. You can pull a pin off the different type of improvement types that we have here. Drag and drop them on a location, and then a box will open up and you tell us what you would like to see, or you can share an experience that we need to know about. So this is the opportunity, this is the QR code, which MPO staff can share with you all as well if they haven't done so already. But please take a moment and give us your thoughts. If you got a friend or if you know anyone else, share this link, please, for us, so we can gather up as much info as we can.
Are these roads only a problem during spring training?
Well, Fruitville could be a problem 301. So I think if we're talking about like, real congestion problems, those are the ones that are gonna be the problems. Tuttle and some of the other roads, I do not believe they show up on any of our reliability maps. We're curious to see what the long-range plan modeling results. I'm trying to circle back to this so that way we can get to it. Curious to see what the VC, volume to capacity ratios, that's kind of the metric that tells us, hey, by 2050, we don't have, there's gonna be a poor level of service on this roadway. So that information we collected up just last week, and that's only because, the work on the LRTP is just kind of ongoing. So, I'll be honest, I don't foresee a whole lot of issues on those other roads. What we see more, at least right now, based on the data we've collected, are conflicts with bike, ped, and other users of that road.
If the city of Sarasota is planning economic development around the stadium, and I'll say that because in Bradenton, the mobility study you all did for us around Lakecom is anticipating just that. So, that's gonna happen. Is your work gonna be a preview to more economic development?
We've got a little bit of we got a market analysis, and I kind of glossed through it, but it's robust, there's a lot of information there. Our focus are transportation improvements. If I had brought up the future land use map, and I'm just kind of giving you some context here. The city does have mixed use development slated for some of those areas that are like heavy commercial, industrial at this point. So it is a target for the city to redevelop, that area. There is some opportunity there to do just that. So we'll probably provide, some data points from that market analysis that could support some potential redevelopment. I do think it'll take some time for something like that to happen. I hope that answers your question.
It does. Any other
Good
comments or questions? Are you done or you got more?
No, that's it. I think I think that last slide was the outreach slide. Yep. Thank you.
Ryan, thank you. Last, part of the MPO report is a draft joint presentation for the regional incentive program. And Varsity, is that you? Nita.
I will give it a shot. Slides, thank you. So there were 2 draft priority lists included in your agenda packets. This is specifically for what's called the Transportation Regional Incentive Program. One list is a joint list with Charlotte County Punta Gorda MPO to the south, and the second list was with Hope TPO, our neighbors towards the northeast. So the Transportation Regional Incentive Program is a state funding source. It was a line item in the presentation that Franco just gave. If you saw the numbers, it's not a big funding source. We get maybe $2 to $4 million a year. But it's not a grant program either. It's more of a matching program. And the purpose of the program is really to incentivize regional road or public transportation projects. The projects from Sarasota and Manatee County that are on those lists are also on the list of project priorities, and that is a requirement of the program. It does require regional partnerships, which is why we develop these lists in partnerships with our MPO neighbors, and why it's also included in our long-range transportation plans and in our local priority lists to demonstrate regional significance. The TRIP list also, or the TRIP funding program also requires a 50% match. So it's basically the state that says, hey, we'll bring 50% of the total project cost to the table if the locals can come up with the other 50%. So it's a mechanism to help drive regional transportation projects. So some of the projects that you'll see on the list this year, or more so the previous years, is projects like Moccasin Wallow in Manatee County or Lorraine Road, really big, larger roadway projects. So this is a draft list. We're just presenting it for information at this point. We'll bring the lists back to you in May to support board adoption. After which we send it out to the state just to show that there is regional support for these projects. It is a separate application that the local agencies submit as well to the state. So with that, I'll take any questions.
That's it.
That's it.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Any comments or questions for Nina? Thank you very much. Last piece of business is just to do our once around the table. And I'll start with Mr. Green.
We don't put me on the spot, thank you.
I'm just kidding.
Well, I'm actually happy to announce that as of a few weeks ago, I was actually named the vice chair for the Bradenton City Planning Commission. So that's some very tall shoulders and giants. I'm following behind, mainly with Kurt, of course, being once a member of the board. I'm definitely gonna be probably picking his brain periodically when I have to. So.
Congrats, team.
Yeah, congratulations.
Steve?
I'm good. Thanks.
John?
I'm good.
Bob? Xavier?
I'm good.
I'll just close out the meeting by saying that I know all the folks from Manatee County. I don't know you all as well from Sarasota County, so I'm gonna reach out to you individually, and if you'll make time for me, I'll come your way, and you can show me around your part of the county a little bit, so I can be better versed on some of these projects, and would be very interested in learning more. I think that's about it. We have a lot of work to do. And I want to thank staff for very thorough preparation and Shuni for guiding me through this initial meeting. And with that, I guess I take a motion to adjourn. So move. Second. All those in favor, aye? Aye. Thank you.